Hi, how's it going? I think this video might have been a long time coming because I've been really thinking for a lot of years about why Africa is in such a position that it is in the world. Because it seems like Africa is part of the world, but no one really likes that part of the world. It's like a part of the world that is not in this world. And this goes to all of the countries that are considered to be poor countries. It's like our reality or their reality is different from reality on the life on earth, because they say that money makes the world go round. So things don't go round in certain parts of the world because of the way that money is controlled. And the way that money is controlled is crazy because all of the money is controlled by a few participants. So money is so important in this world, but as the videos in this channel show, is that money is actually an artifice. It's not even real, but it is something that's controlling everything in society. So it's pretty crazy that money is just a theory, and this theory is running everything. People are starving because they don't have money. People are dying because they don't have money. So in this sense, I've been thinking about why there's so many problems in Africa, why Africa is so poor, impoverished, and bad, and why all of these things are manifesting in this century where people are supposedly better and lives are better, even though things considered good in certain areas are bad in other areas. So understanding that Africa is placed in the middle of the world, in the middle of Asia and America. So it's in the middle of East and West. So when you're in Africa, you have the perfection of East and West, and you have all of the seas converging in this place that is right there at the center of the world. So this should be the main trading area in the whole world. Like if we're really looking at it in terms of how trade happens, we know that all of the trade is happening on the sea or on top of the sea. So everything is shipped, like you're shipping goods because of the seas, because it's an airship or just a ship. So this ship is always moving according to the water and the trade winds. So Africa is actually situated in the most perfect place ever for trade to happen, for wealth to circulate, for it to be in a better position. So if you look at it and then you look at inside of Africa, you'd find that it is in the perfect position to be the richest continent in the world because it has all of the minerals and resources known to man. You find them all in one place. In other areas around the world, you have to find oil there, and then you find some crystals there, then you find some diamonds there. But in Africa, you find 80% of all of the minerals known to man in one continent. So when you dig deeper into the story, you'd realize that because of all of this wealth, all of these advantages, a lot of European countries have come to colonize Africa and also parts of Asia, some parts of South America. But Africa was the cash cow because Africa created more money than all of the other empire, all of the other colonial empires combined. Because India as a country is huge because it was the most profitable country. But Africa and India and China actually are emerging economies. In Africa, you have emerging economies, South Africa, Egypt, and things like that. But when you look at the demographics, you'd see that Africa, India, and China have a similar typography in the sense that there's so many in the sense that there are 1.3 billion people in India, close to 1.3 billion in China, 1.3 billion in Africa. So this whole continent was a place of the Bantu people, which are the same people who were occupying the continent of Africa. Like this is 60% of Africa, and they were occupying Africa in terms of the Bantu people and the Nubian people, the Hamitic people. So the Bantus were everywhere. In Egypt, you find Bantus. In Mauritius, you find Bantus. You find them everywhere. just like how you find a certain type of people in all of these different countries. So they have a similar profile in terms of that. So in terms of resources, we see that Africa, in terms of that land mass where it is situated, you find so many minerals and resources, but you find the most poverty, the most deplorable situations that you can imagine are there. So why is it so poor? Because it's so poor because people wanted to come and exploit it. So first of all, there was a slave trade. The slave trade took the skilled people out of Africa. So when these skilled people left Africa, it left Africa with unskilled people. Simple as that. So when they went, Africa had to suffer because of that. That's one thing. So the people who actually created or built America were Africans in terms of intellect and in terms of actual power. So this was before we had industrialization. So the only mode of operation was for a person to carry like heavy boulders and stuff like that. And this is what happened. And even the people, the brains behind certain architecture plans were actually African descent. This is a very funny issue. So and another thing was the most important thing, which was colonization, which is when, after slave trade, the European countries came to Africa in order to settle in Africa because they know the geographic significance of this continent. So they wanted to actually live. They wanted to relocate to Africa. So a lot of people actually did do that, relocated to Africa, but they weren't able to like really consolidate all of the power forever because the people there are people who are also able to organize certain things. But the way that everything happened was so deceptive and so criminal that it is interesting to consider that it was all legal based on civil laws. So everything was legally done, everything was cool, even though the contracts were all fraudulent. But this is what happened. So they colonized and they actually created a certain mindset in the people that stays today. And that is the biggest problem. This is the biggest problem that no one wants to acknowledge for Western power. Because if I say that Africa is poor because of Europeans who came to Africa, it seems like I'm shifting the blame. But if I say that Europeans are rich because they robbed Africa, this is actually a fact. And this is not a shifting of blame, but this is just something you just have to acknowledge, that the gold that was mined, which is not found everywhere as it is found in Africa, was actually extracted from this place through exploitation and taken to other countries. Okay, so this is something that was recurrently happening. And in saying all this, is very important to realize that Africa was actually a very, 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 very extremely civilized continent with civilized ideas. The Right, you just look at like Egypt, okay? Look at Kemet. Kemet actually is a part of Egypt, a small part of Egypt, which is where we get the whole idea of chemistry. And these chemists were actually black people, obviously, because Kemet means black. Look at another kingdom, like Kemetic kingdom, right? And then you have Egyptian kingdoms. And then you also have Kushite kingdoms. Kushite kingdoms, which were powerful, sovereign, and really strong. And all of these things, you have to realize that every Greek philosopher, every single Greek philosopher, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, these are the archetypal philosophers. So all of these Western philosophers were educated in Africa. They came to Libya, they went to Timbuktu, they went to Morocco, they went to Kemet, some of them went to the Kushite kingdoms to be educated. This is where they got this knowledge from. And this is something that you don't hear. And this is something that is very, very funny, that you don't actually hear. You don't actually know this. But this is something that Socrates is writing about. Like, oh yeah, I was in Africa for 14 years. They taught me all of these things. So yeah, this is very, very crazy. And if you look at Spain, which was the largest kingdom, the largest empire, which was bigger than the British Empire, was was controlled by Moroccans, the Moors, who controlled Spain, and Spain was taken over from them by the Germans, two different types of German groups, had to take out the Spanish, which were the black kings. This is all just crazy stuff, and I haven't even gone lower to the Igbo kingdoms, to the Ethiopian kingdoms, to the Ugandan kingdoms, to Tanganyika, where the world actually started, which is in Tanzania. I haven't even gotten to the Mashonaland kingdoms, Mono Motapa, which was the greatest gold state in the whole southern region, which controlled the whole of the southern region, which is where all of the gold was mined. This is where Great Zimbabwe is. This is the Great House of Stone. And from this, it's just showing these, yeah. So this is actually just a snapshot of Africa. And all of these kingdoms were like sucked dry. Like if you look at the art in European museums right now, like the Benin bronze is in the new is in Amsterdam or somewhere there. The Rosetta Stone is taken from Africa. It's gone. The obelisks, which one of them is actually in DC right now, is gone. The other one, I think, is in Rome at the Vatican. It's gone, taken from Africa. Some of the other one was taken from Ethiopia. All of these things were just happening, and this is the same thing that keeps on happening. So when you actually read up on Egypt and the Sphinx, you'd see that the same thing that is happening is that we're drawing in breath through our noses. God gave us the spirit of life, and then we drew in breath, and this is where we got our essence and being and our spirit. And what they did when they came to Africa is that they shot off the nose of the Sphinx because it's a black person's nose. So they shot it off to choke us. This is how we lost our breath of life. Because now people don't even know that they have this understanding. When I talk about Africa, it's like I'm talking about a poverty-stricken place. No one refers to it as the birthplace of mankind, the birthplace of education, the richest continent ever, where we had all of these ideas, these proverbs. This is where everyone indigenous comes from. Indigenous is indigo, indigo is black, everyone indigenous. So when they found indigenous Americans, they were talking about black Americans. So they're actually saying it, but you only hear when you hear. So the Indians themselves are indigenous. This is the second richest continent. This is the second richest country, colony. And these were Indians or indigos or indigenous. And these are indigo people, black people. And these are the people who populated the entire world. So what was Christopher Columbus discovering when he found indigenous people there? He was rediscovering the place that was discovered by indigo people. So this is just the loop in this world, that they're saying things that they don't really mean to say. So they have to say it. This is double speak, 1984, George Orwell. Because Africa is so rich, and right now it's impoverished because of certain things like colonization. Right now it's speaking in English. This English could be better than some people who are in England right now. Probably is. But I'm doing this because this country was colonized, and through this colonization, this is the problem, that now we have this false mindset that is giving us a false doctrine. We are not talking about Mansa Musa, the richest black person who's ever lived, right? The richest person from Mali, a king of Mali, right? That's another kingdom. So we're talking about it in terms of King Arthur, King Henry, all of these things. These are the people that they taught us at school, force feeding us all of this information that we have about these European people, which I don't have anything against them, but it's just the fact that they don't tell us the truth. They don't tell us what is beneficial to a person of melanin tint, or a person who is actually the indigenous person in this world. So it's very, very rude. Yeah, but it's really not good. But the whole process of it is being done in a way that is not that is racist. So this is one reason why Africa is so poor, because there are so many obstacles that were put systematically so that certain people could maintain power over this continent. So there's so much riches in this continent that it does not have to be this poor or impoverished, because in reality it isn't. The people who lived here or who live here are inherently or innately or are born rich. They're all of royal descent. So their kings were taken away because when they came, they just killed the kings, they just killed the leaders, they killed the healers. These were the people who were taken out. and then they just left people who didn't have a leader anymore. And if we take out Trump in America, or you take out any leader, you're going to create chaos. So this is just a natural phenomenon that happened. But it was a massacre. So this massacre is still being perpetrated. But it's very important for anyone in Africa or any African to realize that this poverty is something that has to be eradicated, not by hating anyone who is European, but by being able to understand the system and being able to know thyself, to know yourself, to know God in you, and to be able to understand that to be spiritual is is to know who you are and what everything else around you is. To know yourself and to be able to actualize any idea that you have, which is something that was very hard for any person to do, because when you're in a colonized state, or in a place where someone else wants to colonize or to take over a person's mindset, a person's livelihood, then it's very hard for a person to have an idea where they have a place where they can actually implement it, because everything is being controlled so that people are forever oppressed. So this is a psychological conditioning that has to be undone. This is now the problem we have in our time, that the colonization never stopped. But then what happened is now the colonization or the enslavement or the entrapment is obviously in the mind. So now how you're able to conquer your own mind is how you're able to escape this trick, because this is the way or the reason we got independent. So independence does not mean that you are free. Freedom is another word. Independence is another word. Liberty is another word. Okay, so independent means that you're now dependent in yourself in order to inform yourself so that you can transform yourself. This is what independence is. This is the right for self-governance. This is what it is. So you're able to actually actualize whatever you want to do. This is why there's so many billionaires in Africa right now. But then they don't have the infrastructure to implement anything, because it's not yet independent. It's still being suppressed. It's still being oppressed because there's so much wealth in it. And all of this wealth is not even tapped out yet. It's not tapped out yet. So there's still a lot more wealth in it. So when you look at Black Panther, what you're actually looking at is a prophecy or a parody or both, because this is talking about the reality of the power of black people, but they're making fun of it because it's like a tease. So so the true understanding is not going to be found in a Hollywood story, because it's just Hollywood. So the true understanding is going to be found in how people actually liberate their minds and become truly sovereign, and this is the aspiration. This is what we're aiming at: sovereignty of heart, soul, and mind, sovereignty in economic matters, financial matters, and spiritual matters. So this is very important, and this is the reason why Africa is poor, and it's poor because it's rich, and it's rich and will always be rich because the people there enrich everyone. Everything comes out of Africa. Everyone comes out of Africa. The people are African. Everyone is indigenously from Africa. So the richness can never be replenished. But the thing is, people don't actually know it. It's not like they're willingly doing this, but certain people don't know it, but certain people do know it. So now you know it. So it's all about how you liberate your mind. So thank you a lot for watching this, and I'll see you soon.